Thank you very much.
Your powers,
Thank you.
James. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you to those watching online as well. Welcome to the Wigtown Book Festival. Sponsored this event, a special event sponsored by the Annandale Distillery, partly because of this event here, Mr. Cosmo's own whiskey. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
My name is Teddy Jameson. I'm a freelance writer. I write for the Herald, the Sunday Post. Anyone will have me. You don't need to know who I am. And you don't really need me to tell you who this is. It is a bit of a cliche. Oh, some people don't need an introduction. Just look at him. You know the face, don't you?
Yeah,
but I am
bless you.
contractually obliged. So bear with me.
Thank you, Eddie.
James Cosmo is an actor. I think he's one of the great Scottish character actors. He is also a great Scot, officially. You were awarded that. That was one of the things you were awarded in your life.
Indeed.
As well as an MBE,
Yeah,
a BAFTA Scotland Award.
yeah.
You have 227 film and TV credits to your name, according to IMDb. 227. Can you imagine lining them all up together? That's a binge watch and a half, I would say.
Yeah.
Over the years, James has played policemen, hardmen, soldiers, Santa Claus. He's played Robert the Bruce and Robert the Bruce's dad at various times. Time does pass, James.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? His first credit, I believe, was Dr. Finlay's Casebook in
It was indeed.
1965.
Yeah. It was indeed, yes.
He is currently in the BBC series Night Sleeper, which is on tomorrow and finishes on Monday night. No spoilers. We won't be telling you anything that happens. Don't worry about that. I binge watched it, though, I have to say. We know James from, well, what do we not know from James from? Highlander, Braveheart, Trainspotting the sequel, T2. We know him from Sons of Anarchy, Chronicles of Narnia. He was the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch in Game of Thrones. You may have seen that. He wore that big feathery coat in the Bank of Scotland ads.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's even done Celebrity Big Brother. What has this man not done? So we're going to have a chat tonight about a life and work. There's so much to talk about. James is 76 now. He's still a keen gardener, keen cook,
Yeah,
fly fisherman,
yeah.
likes a dram or two.
Absolutely, yeah.
And he has even now helped devise this whiskey.
Yeah.
So it's called Storyman. There's a few stories to tell. We'll hopefully get some out of him tonight. Yeah. Would you please give the warmest of Wigtown welcomes to our guest, James Cosmo.
Thank you. Thank you.
James, 76, and yet you're still busy working. What, aren't you going to put your feet up?
Yeah, my wife said you should be thinking about retiring or whatever, and I can't imagine what it would be like to retire. My life is acting, and I shall continue till I fall over somewhere, but it's the joy of my life. It's what my life has been for the last 60 odd years. So I just love the communication with other performers and bringing, hopefully, entertainment to people and information to people. So, yeah, I'll just keep on going. I don't care.
That's good to hear.
I don't care.
That's good to hear. I wanted to start with the whiskey, actually, in
Yeah.
the sense that
Yeah,
I can't imagine...
we've got to get the sales out there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I can't imagine that having your face on a whiskey label was part of the plan.
I know.
How did it come about?
Every time I look at it, I go, oh, God, really? But I tell you how it started. I said to Andy Pancholi, my business partner, Andy, he's just over there. Stand up, Andy. Hello. He's my pal. And, like when you're doing movies and things, you finish the film or the series or whatever it is, and you think, oh, God, what am I going to buy these people, And you wander around Waterstones buying cookery books and they're never going to read them. And I said to Andy, why don't we, like, just get a whiskey that we can give them, a bottle of my whiskey? And so Andy said, right, leave it to me. And I'd met the folk from Annandale before because I'd done a movie called The Outlaw King with Chris Pine. And they were going to produce a whiskey called The Outlaw King. And because of some sort of contractual problem, it didn't happen.
Right.
But I'd met all the guys there, you know. So Andy, I've got to give him all credit, he talked to them and they said, hang on, it's a bit more than just your whiskey. You know, we should bring this out to the public. And so it took us about 2 years to finally get the because it's a blended whiskey. It's full of very good single malts, and it took us 2 years to refine it into the whiskey that I really like. You know, it's smooth and it's sweet, and it's a wee bit of peat, but not too much, and it's something that the ladies can enjoy. You know, it's not a harsh whiskey, and so we developed that, and that's where we got to. Yeah,
Lots of testings then.
it was terrible.
I was just thinking that.
It was so hard, you know, having to drive up with Andy and, you know, oh God, we've got to try some more whiskey. But Keith Law, who was the master blender, who had retired from Diageo, which is a great big company, and Keith came out of retirement to blend our whiskey, and he did, you know, like 6 times we had to travel up and refine it all the way down, and eventually we found that we had to make the decision, is this your whiskey? And I said, yes, that's the one. And so I do hope you enjoy it, because I love it. It's great.
Who have you given it to?
I've given it to so many people.
How have the reviews been?
It's been fantastic.
Good.
We've won so many prizes. We won the People's Choice Award, the gold medal, last year for the best blended Scotch whisky. We came in the top 10 in the WOW competition in China, which is for all spirits. We came in the top 10. So we've been very blessed by people really enjoying it. And funnily enough, Andy was over in Boston, and I was over in New York this weekend, and John Krasinski, who was with me in Jack Ryan, was extolling its virtues. So that was great.
That's not a bad review at all. Listen, let's step back and talk about your journey to acting.
Yeah.
Actually, before that, when we were kind of chatting before the event, I was saying how much I was watching Night Sleeper, and James told me, "Oh, I never watch anything."
Yeah.
You don't watch anything you've made?
No, I don't. It's a funny thing, you know, when you've been in something. Well, obviously you know the story, you know how it develops and all that sort of thing. But the one thing that I find quite disconcerting is my family doesn't watch me either. You know, I said to my wife last week, "Do you know that Night Sleeper? I was in that," and she went, "Are you?" No. But I guess it's sort of refreshing, really, because to my wife and my kids, I'm just a husband and a dad. That's it. Yeah.
In Night Sleeper, you play a retired train driver.
Yeah.
I have to ask you, growing up, did you always want to be a train driver?
No. But you know what? You know what I was thinking? That Night Sleeper is a bit like Britain just now. You know, everyone's stuck in this really small space, and nobody gets on, and we're all shouting at each other, and there's nobody driving the train. I just thought that's just like this country.
So what did you want to be growing up?
What did I want to be? I always thought that my father was an actor.
He was, yes.
He was a jobbing actor, as they called it. He worked in the theatre, he did a bit of TV and a few films and things. But I always knew that I left school when I was 15 and worked in Arnott Young's, the shipbreakers in Clydebank, for a year or so. But I always knew that there was, I just wanted a different sort of life. And I hitchhiked down to London when I was 17 and met my dad, who I hadn't seen in quite a while, and just started to work as an actor, because I took such a joy from that profession, and I always have done.
Yeah.
I think I think it's about communication that really fascinates me. That we can, whatever part you play, you communicate with your audience out there and maybe inform them and see the different aspects of life. So I always felt that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah. But you would have known from your dad's experience that it wasn't necessarily an easy number.
No, I think it was a tremendous advantage, actually, Ed, that like so many people nowadays go into the profession of being an actor, thinking that it's going to be Hollywood and photographers and all that sort of stuff, But I knew from looking at my dad, I could see him with his head in his hands, thinking how he was going to pay the tax bill, and wondering where the next job was going to come from. So I knew that it wasn't an easy road. So that was a big advantage. And one of the things that I learned very quickly was that when I was out of work, I didn't hang around and say, I'm an actor who's out of work. I went to work. And I went to work on the roads. I went to work in pubs. I went to work anywhere that paid me money. And that's one thing that supported me all through my career. That as soon as I finished acting, I would go and work on the roads or whatever and earn some money. And I never took a penny from anyone. Always get paid. And I think that's really good for an actor, because one thing is that I like to say to young actors, if you're working say in a pub or in a building site or whatever, you're learning about people. You're learning about how people react, you're just learning how people behave, and one day you're going to be able to use that in a performance. So I always thought it was very beneficial to me. Yeah.
I want to go back to childhood, because there's two stories that I've read about your young life that are so curious to me that I have to ask you about them. Yeah. So your dad, as you say, up and down career, but he gets a job in the West End in London. Yeah. And eventually calls your mum and says, can you bring you and your sister down to London? Now, you'd jump on the bus, wouldn't you? You'd jump on a train, maybe fly if you had the money. You went in a gypsy wagon. Yeah. Yeah. A gypsy wagon?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, firstly, how do you find a gypsy wagon?
Exactly. Yeah. So I was 8 at the time, and my dad, as you say, had got this part in the West End, and it was they knew it was going to be a long-running farce thing. It actually lasted 4 years that he worked at it. But he sent up some money to my mum, who worked at the Singer's sewing machine factory in Clydebank. And so it was just me, Mum, and my sister Laura, and he sent up some money to us. And as you say, you thought you would have taken the coach, probably, in those days, or the train. We wouldn't have flown. That was far too expensive. But my mum got this money, and she paid off the the rent that we owed and all, all that stuff, because we were living up we were in a single end in Clydebank. It wasn't particularly enjoyable. But she went out and the first day she bought a gypsy bow-top wagon, the one with the canvas cover. And she bought that the first day, and then she went down to the fish market for some reason. And she bought a horse called Bobby. And he was a grey. He was about 6 years old, 7 years old. And she put us all together, and we headed off towards London. And it was a wonderful trip, because if you can imagine a wee boy setting off, all I ever knew was, because I was born in 1947, so where we lived, I don't want to put, make it so desperate, but, we lived in a bomb site, because Clydebank had been decimated by the Germans, they'd flattened the place. And so my playground was a bomb site, and we headed off with this caravan and this horse, and we left Glasgow and then discovered the countryside, and it was so wonderful. It was so beautiful. And when we got to, funnily enough, Dumfries, there was an old, I thought of him as an old guy. He was maybe in his 60s, and he joined us, and he travelled down. His name was Sandy. I never knew his second name, but we travelled together all the way down to London. And I didn't know, I didn't have a dad, really. And he became my dad. And it was a wonderful, beautiful experience, and he was an old, he was a stockman, and it was wonderful. He taught me how to poach trout and snare rabbits and all those wonderful things that stay with me even now, So I was very grateful for that.
What, lasted 6 weeks or something like that, took you to get there?
Took about 8 to 10 weeks,
Wow.
I think it was. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
So that's your first real experience with a horse. Obviously, that would come in useful later on, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What happened to Bobby?
Huh?
What happened to Bobby?
Well, I tell you, it's a really nice story, because he was brought up in the fish market, so he always worked round the town. And when my mum, because she didn't know anything about horses, isn't that ridiculous? Like, what? Anyway, we get out of Glasgow, and Auchenshoogle, right? The trams. I don't know if any of you are from Glasgow, but like the trams, the number 64 tram used to go to Auchenshoogle, and I used to think, God, what's beyond Auchenshoogle? Like, it's another world out there. And Bobby felt the same. And when we get past Auchenshoogle, Bobby started to walk into oncoming traffic. And my mum realised that he was wearing blinkers, and all he ever saw were the tram lines. So when the tram lines disappeared, he was wandering all over the place looking for the tram lines. But anyway, we got down to London, and there was an article in a newspaper called the Daily Sketch about my mum travelling down. It was called Hop Along Helen. I always remember that. And we got all these letters from, usually from wee girls saying, oh, I want to, look after Bobby and things. But in amongst all these letters was a letter from a farmer up in Yorkshire, and he said that he only used heavy horses on his land. He didn't use tractors, like really sustainable farming as now. And he said, I'd be very happy to take Bobby. So we gave Bobby to him. And for years and years afterwards, we would get Christmas cards from Bobby and his partner, and that ploughed the fields and things. So he ended up his life, from the fish market in Glasgow to a lovely open air, fresh life in Yorkshire. Yeah.
it's made this evening worthwhile straight away, I think. The other story that I love about your childhood is there's a story, your dad became friendly with Peter O'Toole.
Yeah.
And there's a story, a wonderful story of your dad and Peter in the pub, surprise, surprise, perhaps, and you outside playing cricket. But playing cricket with Sean Connery. Why was Sean Connery not in the pub?
I know, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's such a diverse life, you know, and I look back on it and I think, how did that happen? You know, like one minute I was in a tenement in Glasgow, and then I'm in a gypsy wagon travelling down to London, and then I'm in Highgate, and there are all these film stars around. It was extraordinary. But my dad was huge friends with Peter O'Toole, and Sean Connery. He was in South Pacific in the chorus line in the West End, and my mum used to. She would make a curry every Sunday, like a curry, really. You know, it was like wasn't the curry you get nowadays. It was this curry powder. Anyway, all these homeless and starving actors would come and join us for a Sunday, and Sean was amongst them, and Peter, and it was lovely because many years later, I was filming Troy in Mexico, and Peter O'Toole was playing one of the main characters. And he said to me one day, we were on the set, and he said, you know, James, he said, I hate American television. He said, I just hate it. He said, so I get my son to send me videos of my favorite programs. I went, oh, okay, great. He said, well, one of my favorite programs is Dad's Army. And I went, yeah, okay. And he said, I was watching it last night, and he said, you'll never guess who was on it. And I thought, was my dad on that? And he said, yes, he was. He said, and I cried and cried and cried. Isn't that lovely?
So listen, let's jump forward. I mean, as you say, you had this, you started acting,
Yeah.
you went through the 70s and 80s, you turned up in the Sweeney, the Bill, all
Yeah,
of those,
yeah.
you did all of that stuff. And then in 1994, there's this phone call to the house, and your wife shouts upstairs, it's Mel Gibson on the phone.
The most ridiculous story. I don't know if you've heard it. Maybe you have. But I had met the wonderful Mel Gibson, and he is a wonderful man. He's a gorgeous man. I'd met him. It's called like a general meeting, you know, when you just meet someone, and he said, "Oh, I'm thinking of doing this movie, maybe whatever, you know," and you meet the guy, and that's it, you know. Always remember, because he's very sort of, you know, he's got a bit of a problem with booze and all that sort of stuff. And I went up to meet him, and he said, "Hey, James, this is like 10 o'clock in the morning." He said, "James, you want a drink?" And I went, "Oh, absolutely, yeah, it was great." And then he said, listen to this music. It's from this French guy, you know, that plays the pipes, you know, like a Breton
The
pipes.
Breton pipes, yeah.
And it was the music from Braveheart, you know, that really iconic music. And so I said, yeah, that's amazing. That was about it. And so I left. So I forgot all about it, you know, so it's 6 months, 7 months later. And my wife and I had just got together, Annie, my beloved wife, and we'd just had a baby, Ethan, who's now 30 and a big lump. Anyway, we were so skint. Annie worked at the BBC, and I'd been working, but not making a huge amount of money, you know, like just getting by. And so we're living in this one-bedroom flat in Twickenham, and we had a rocking chair that we'd borrowed from Annie's mum. We had a TV, and we bought a futon. one of these Japanese beds. And the wee fella was sleeping in there, and we had slept in there. So the one treat of the week was a curry, right? Saturday night. I'm from Glasgow. Of course I have a curry on a Saturday night. And
He's having a curry tonight as well.
I am. And so I always remember it was 20 to 11 in Twickenham. And the curry had just arrived, right? Delivered. And I thought, yeah, it's a terrific movie on. And, not days you could, like streaming or anything. It was, there's a film. So I'm sitting there in the rocking chair, and I've got the thingy. What is it?
Your tray.
A tray.
Yeah. Not a tile, just a tray.
Lap, and I've got the curry, right? And the phone rings, and I said to Annie, I said, that'll be my best friend, God rest his soul, Dominic. I said, he's phoning to see if I'll come out for a pint. So I said to Annie, just say, no, I'll see you in the morning. I just want to eat my curry, and I want to watch this film. So Annie goes over, and she answers the phone, and she says, yes. Okay. Could you just hang on a wee minute? And I went, Annie, but what? And she went, Mel Gibson. I said, what? And she handed me the phone, and then she went into the kitchenette and shut the door. Like, what? And I still thought it was Dominic. And I answered the phone, I went, hello? And this voice said, hey, Jimmy, it's Mel. And I went, aye, sure, Dom. What? Because Dom was really good at voices and all that. I went, what, Dom? And he went, no, it's Mel Gibson. And I thought, oh, it really is. And he said, would you like to come and play Campbell? The father and the thing. And I said, oh, my goodness, I'd love to. And he said, okay, see you Monday. And that was great. That was it. Yeah.
Did you, going into that, realise what a phenomenon it was going to be? I mean, did you say to Mel, you're really making a film about a medieval Scottish warrior, and you think that's going to fly?
I actually did.
Yeah.
I remember sitting in, sadly, we filmed in Glen Nevis for about 4 weeks, which was great, and they shot all the beautiful mountain scenes and all that sort of stuff. And then we moved to Ireland, to just out in the Wicklow Mountains, to film outside there, which was a great shame because, an iconic Scottish movie should have been shot in Scotland, but, that's the circumstances that there was different tax benefits that Ireland were giving at that time. But I remember sitting in Neary's Bar. I don't know if you know Neary's Bar. It's just off Grafton Street in Dublin. It's a terrific pub. Great, wonderful Guinness. And I was sitting with the screenwriter of the thing, Randall Wallace. And I said to him, I think this is going to have a huge effect in Scotland. And he didn't believe it. He thought, no, he said, no, it's just a movie. It's okay. But it did have an extraordinary effect. I knew it would do. I don't know if it was for the best politically. I don't know. I'm not sort of politically minded really. But I did know that it would have a huge effect on Scotland.
Yeah. I wonder when you're making it, there's Scottish actors there, Irish actors there,
Yeah.
English actors there.
Yeah.
Did it ever become tribal, James?
Not really. No, because we were all sort of very sort of cloistered amongst the group of Scots. The wonderful David O'Hara, one of our finest Scottish actors, Brendan Gleeson, Irish actor playing my son, and no, we felt like a real tribe. and it was wonderful. I mean, can you imagine spending a whole summer in Ireland riding horses and dressed like that and playing heroes, which we're not, but we're pretending to be heroic characters. It was an extraordinary experience, which I'm absolutely cherish. And it's hard to understand how people look at me as a person in that movie, if you know what I mean. I was incredibly privileged to be part of that, and it was maybe one of the greatest experiences in my life.
Really? Yeah. Edward of the First Army is just outside. I don't know if you can hear them. They're just behind us. I'm going to jump forward then to Trainspotting, because there you are. You're in Braveheart, which is, as you say, an iconic Scottish movie. And then, what, a year, 18 months later, you're in Trainspotting, another very different iconic Scottish movie, playing Ewan McGregor's dad, I think, in that. All those guys, so Carlisle, McGregor, Johnny Lee Miller, they're all about to become, they're just about to take off. Yeah. I'm wondering, did they come to you for advice? Were you out partying with them, James?
No, not really. Not really. Trainspotting was the most extraordinary piece of cinematography. It was, I think Danny Boyle is maybe one of the greatest directors that we've had in the industry. He is absolutely iconic and such a joy to work with. It almost feels as if you're not working with him. It's not work. You're just enjoying it. And it was a wonderful experience. And you knew that, Bobby Carlisle, my goodness, I mean, what a performance, and Johnny Lee Miller, they were just fantastic. And you knew they were going to fly. And it was a delight to be part of that, And when Danny, I remember I was driving. I was going fishing. Oh, I'm always going fishing. But I was driving, and Danny phoned me, and he said, "I'm making." Hello, James. He said, "I'm making a Trainspotting 2." He said, "I've only got one scene, but would you like to be in it? Because I really need you." And I thought I would crawl across broken glass to be in a Danny Boyle film. So I was delighted. Yeah.
Did you ever feel that you were typecast during your career?
Yeah. I think so many actors are I was a big lump when I was young. I was very fit. Well, I'm still pretty cool. But I could ride horses and do all that sort of stuff. And I was very physical. So yeah, the parts you went up for things that required that. If you wanted to be someone that can ride a horse, do sword fights and all that sort of stuff. But as you get older, you tend to move maybe towards more thoughtful parts, and so my career has sort of changed, but in a great way, like the physical stuff and the tough guy stuff, that's way in the past, and you find much more interesting pieces and more, yeah.
When was your first screen kiss?
Oh, goodness. It's funny, isn't it, that someone as good looking as me. Anyway, no, but it's really odd, because I remember it was on what do you call it? His Dark Materials, and I was acting opposite this very beautiful actress, and it was just to share that moment with you. I played this guy called Father Coram. I don't know if you've seen Dark Materials, but it's a really good series. It's terrific. But Father Coram is this old guy who's like a avuncular part of Lara's life. but he had been married before to a witch, and witches never grow old, but Father Coram had grown old, but they had a child together, and the child died, and then Father Coram, they separated, and so he's in his 70s, but his wife is still young and beautiful. And we came to this scene. I always remember it was down in South Wales. We were filming it, and this lovely Croatian actress, and she was playing the witch that I'd been married to, you know. And I just thought it was so emotional for me, because I thought, can you imagine as an old man seeing the love of your life as a 20-year-old and never being able to bring that back again, you know? And it was wonderful. And that first kiss was the first kiss I had on screen, and I found it very emotional. Yeah.
What did Annie
But
think
that's the
about
last
it?
one.
What did Annie think about it?
Oh, she never watched it.
Well, to the other extreme,
Yeah.
what's been your best death scene?
I tell you, we've got to go back to Braveheart. Now, a couple of things. My character, Old Campbell, who's the old warrior, Brendan Gleeson's dad, and he gets, you know, like I died by installments, you know, and an arm cut off, different things. Oh God! Eventually, I've got to go. So I've been hit with this horrible axe thing, and I'm covered in blood. Anyway, there's this scene that's coming up, and it was just after lunch. Yeah, and interesting that just shows the what would you say about Mel Gibson? The understanding of the acting process that he took as a director. You know, he'd been an actor, he is an actor, and he is a director. But I remember we were walking to the set, and he said to me, hey, Jimmy, he said, what's the cheapest thing on the set? And I was walking along, and I said, I've got no idea. I don't know. What are you talking about? And he said, it's the film and the camera. He said, take as much as you like. And that, you know, when you're coming up to a big emotional scene, it just releases that tension, you know, because all of a sudden then I know that you know, I can sit there and I can do that scene 20 times if I want, and Mel Gibson will say that's okay. So you do it 3 times and it's great. But anyway, we come to the scene, and you know, I talk to Brendan and Mel, and you know, I'm saying I'm proud of you, you know, to be the warriors you are, and then I expire. So we do it a couple of times, and then Mel says, can we go again? Which is surprising because he doesn't do too many retakes. And so I do the scene again, and I'm dead, right? And I can feel Brendan Gleeson, and he's shaking. And I think, oh, he's acting. He's really upset. And it goes on, and it goes on, and it goes on. And I think, how long is this going to go on? I'm dead. And I opened my eyes, and Mel had this thing. If you got a scene wrong, he would come along. You know these clown noses you've got? He would stick it on your nose. Like, I looked up, and there's Brendan Gleeson with this big clown's nose on his face. So that was my favourite death scene.
Listen, I've got a million more questions to ask you, but I'm aware that...
Well, carry on.
Well, no, but I would like everyone in the audience to have the opportunity to ask you as well.
Oh, great,
I think there's a microphone
Yeah.
going round. So if anyone would just stick their hands up if they have got a question. And while you're doing that, and the microphone comes, anyone want any questions? I need to ask you, well, that's one final Braveheart question. When was
Yeah.
the last time you shouted freedom?
Oh, I shout freedom all the time. I shout freedom all the time because it's the most. You know, I think that I've, because of my job, I travel all around the world all the time, you know, and Braveheart seems to have a longevity about it, you know, that it's as fresh now as when it was made. And I wondered about that. And what it is, it's not about the Scots fighting against the English. It's not about that. It's about freedom. And that resonates all round the world because people desperately desire freedom. And that's something that we must protect at all costs, individual freedom. That's what I think.
Thank you, James. Listen, please stick your hands up. There's one right here on the front and the left. See you, sir.
What's your favourite 5 characters for you?
My favourite
your
5
favourite
characters.
5 characters that you've played that you felt you got the best out.
I think obviously Braveheart. I have a lot of affection for the Sweeney that I did, Sergeant Davy Freeth, because I thought that was it turned out to be actually the most popular episode of the Sweeney ever made, and I loved it. The other 5, I don't know. I tell you, I really enjoyed being Father Christmas. Let me tell you a story about Father Christmas. I was, I just finished Troy, I think. Anyway, I'd done Narnia, you know, the thing, Narnia, playing Father Christmas. And I was in Waitrose in Twickenham in London. And I was at the cheese counter. And so I didn't have a big beard, you know, like I didn't look like Father Christmas, but I just had this sort of scruffy stuff. And I was at the cheese counter, and this wee girl, she must have been about 8 or something. And you know that way you can tell somebody's looking at you. And her mum must have been somewhere, but in the store, but she was on her own, and she was looking at me like that. And I went, hi. And she said, "You're Father Christmas, aren't you?" And I thought at that time, I went, "Yeah." And she went, and she went off, obviously, to find her mum. But I love to think there's a lady somewhere in Twickenham that thinks, when I was a kid, I met Father Christmas in Waitrose.
Gentleman here.
Thank you very much for coming and talking to us. You're clearly a very talented actor. I've seen you in lots of things, although your Mel Gibson impersonation is a new one on me. What is the difference between someone like yourself who's been very successful and someone who, these actors who sort of do bit parts in the bill and do a bit of stage work here and there in touring productions? Like, is it just a phone call from Mel Gibson? Is it that sort of element of luck, or what is it that sets these two schools of actors apart?
That's a very good question, and thank you for that. If I am brutally honest, it's luck. It really is. I have known so many talented actors who just didn't get slapped by the lucky stick, you know. Extraordinary actors. And I've known actors that really shouldn't have been that successful, but they are, you know. And we all know those. I'd like to hear your comments. But but yeah, so much so. It's like, were you in the right place at the right time? I was terribly blessed, incredibly blessed, when I started my career. With even as you were saying, Ed, when I started in Dr. Philly's casebook and things, and Bill Simpson. I don't know if maybe the older folk here remember Bill Simpson and Andy Cruikshank, and they were so generous and looked after me because I couldn't walk and chew gum. Nah, I couldn't do it, but they looked after me. So there's a lot of luck to it. And there was one guy especially. He was a wonderful man called Carl Foreman, and he was an American producer, and he'd been chased out of America during the McCarthy times. And he came over here and he made a film called Young Winston and The Virgin Soldiers. And he was, in his 60s or whatever. And he took a shine to me, and he helped me a great deal in my career, which I was very grateful for. But yeah, it's about fate and luck, And the one thing about acting is, if you're a musician, you can go and play the piano in your garret, and enjoy that. If you're a writer, you can write, but an actor needs an audience. You need you folk out there to perform, and if that's not given to you, it's quite traumatic, So yeah. There's a wonderful thing called In Praise of Actors. I can't remember who wrote it. I'll remember it in a second. But he talks about, can you blame actors who are not given the opportunity? This is way back in the Elizabethan days. Thomas Hazlitt, his name was.
Oh, William Hazlitt, yeah.
William Hazlitt.
Yeah.
And thank you. And he talks about, can you blame that person for, if he doesn't get that opportunity, can he not drown his sorrows in not being able to perform? And on the alternative side, when you are praised so much, can you blame them for drinking in all that glory and fame, And he ends up saying, the actors are not praised for enough for what they do because they reflect us. Yeah.
Thank you. Please, any other questions? One here, one there. This one there, please.
Firstly, thanks very much indeed. That was
Thank
brilliant.
you.
I was just wondering, you've worked with a lot of A-listers in your career, huge number of them. Do you still stay pals, or do you just say goodbye at the end of the film, sort of thing?
Yeah, actors they're a gypsy crowd. We meet up and do something together, and then you don't meet them for another 10 years, but that relationship refreshes itself almost immediately, But I do keep in touch with Mel, and I keep in touch with John Krasinski from Jack Ryan. I'm very fond of. So now and then, But I have to say, I'm not particularly a person that moves amongst the great and the good of the acting profession. Like I prefer going down to the local builder's cafe to breakfast with my pal Gary, who's a builder, than meeting up with actors. It's just I try to keep my feet very firmly on the ground.
Full English breakfast? Full English breakfast?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, you betcha.
There's a gentleman here, I think.
Craig Botwood, cattle hoof trimmer. I was going to actually say hello and call you Lord Commander because I watched the entire series of Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
What would you say that your biggest production has actually been over the years of your career?
I think you'd have to split it between maybe Braveheart and Jack Ryan, I think.
Bigger than Game of Thrones?
Yeah, I think Game of Thrones was more a ensemble piece.
Yes.
You know?
I see what you mean.
And an extraordinary piece of work by the people that created it, just amazing. And I felt very privileged to be part of that, you know. But as far as performance goes, I think, I'll never forget Braveheart, ever, because it meant so much to me in so many levels. And Jack Ryan, because I met one of the nicest guys in the world, John Krasinski.
John Krasinski, yeah. Fantastic, thank you. Any more questions? There's one, two there, one behind you on the right.
Hi there. Is there any particular film that you turned down that you wish you hadn't?
I don't think I've turned down any film. What is it they say? I won't do anything until I've read the check. No, I mean, I'm very proud of the fact that I've been in some of the worst films ever. I was telling Andy recently that I saw a film that was in years and years ago called Assault with Frank Findlay, the late, great, wonderful actor Frank Findlay. And I saw this film, and because as I've told you, I hate looking at myself. I just hate it. I don't even like mirrors. It's awful. I like to maintain the illusion. But I saw myself in this film, and I thought, how did I get another job after that? I was absolutely appalling. Like, really? But it just shows the vagaries of my profession, that somebody thought they'd give me a second chance. But that's the great thing about acting. You know, you can, like if you're a doctor, if all your patients die, you're going to get found out, you know. But acting is a bit different. You know, you can carry on for a wee while and people go, oh, well, maybe it was a director or maybe it was a writer, and you can survive.
Fantastic. There was a question here, I think, somewhere. Someone had their hands up, yeah.
Hi there.
Hi.
You made a film, a short film, a few years ago with Katie Tunstall.
Oh, yes,
Carried.
yeah.
I just wondered how you found that.
Yeah, Katie was fantastic. I really, really enjoyed it. And you know, it's funny because you don't really look at your career as, you know, this is a huge film, this is a minor film. It's all about performance and the story and what it's telling people, you know. So working with Katie was extraordinary, you know, and I think I've got more from really small movies, you know, that nobody's ever heard of, that I really think, well, I did okay there, you know. Like, I did a film called The Pyramid Texts, which is a one-man film. It's 94 minutes, monologue about an old boxer, boxing trainer. And, you know, very few people have seen that. It's only on YouTube or whatever, you know, but it was very important to me. So it's not so much about, you know, how big the movie, you know, that's just, you know, marketing and everything else, all those things that, okay, it's a big movie. But it should really be all about performance and how you try and move people and get people to understand the human condition. That's what I think it's basically about.
We've covered a lot of the human condition in the last hour. Unfortunately, our time is kind of almost up. I think really we need a sequel to this, James. I think you need to come back next year and do this all again.
I'd love to come back, and I'm so overwhelmed to see this whole pavilion filled with folk that want to come and join me and talk to me. It's so heartening, and it means a great deal to me. And when Wigton wants me to come back, I will certainly come back. It's been a pleasure.
Listen, thank you all so much for coming this evening. I hope you've enjoyed this experience. James is going to be signing whiskey, and you can ask him questions. There's so many stories we haven't been able to touch on. Ask him about the heart transplant story after Braveheart. That's a really good one.
No, I'm going to tell them. No,
very quickly.
Right, okay. So we've done Braveheart, right? And it's like 8 months afterwards. And so this guy, Doug McGrath, he's a film director, right? And he's doing this film called Emma with, what's her name?
Gwyneth Paltrow.
Gwyneth Paltrow. Yeah, man, you're good. Gwyneth Paltrow, right? So I go and meet him, and all he wants to do is talk about Braveheart, you know, and this is a Bronte thing, isn't it?
Jane Austen.
Jane Austen.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, for goodness sake. Anyway, he offers me this part, right, of playing Gwyneth Paltrow's dad, and Ewan McGregor's in it. And we get there, first morning, I'm wearing these tights, you know, these tights that go up here, you know, and the things. And I come out, open the caravan door, you know, the Winnebago or whatever. And I look, there's Ewan McGregor looking at me like that. And we're both thinking, what the hell are we doing here? Anyway, so the Braveheart people get in touch with me, and they say we're having the premiere is going to be in Stirling on the weekend, right? The Saturday or whatever it is. No, Sunday it was, Sunday. And so I go through my agent and say, listen, I've got to get off. You know, I'm filming Emma, all this nonsense. And I say, I've got to be off, you know. Bugger me. Oh, sorry. They come back and they say, oh, we're shooting this scene in the strawberry fields. And you're in, you know, like you're right in the middle of it, and we can't let you. Ah, jeez. So I phoned my wife and Annie, and I said, "Looks like we can't go up to Stirling for the premiere." And she said, "Oh, okay, that's okay." But I knew she was really upset that she wasn't going to get there. So I'm sitting there thinking about it, you know, and I'm not a rich man. I'm still not a rich man. But I said to her, hire a plane on Saturday, Sunday morning, and we'll fly up there and we'll fly back. She said, no, you can't do it. I said, no, go on, bucket it, we'll just do it. So we hired a plane, and I drove up, they drove me up home for the weekend, and I got on the plane, Annie and I got on the plane, bottle of champagne, oh jeez, great. Farnborough Airport, we flew up, and so we go to the premiere in Stirling Castle, which was like something else. They had, like fire breathers and all that, sort of jugglers, and it was all sort of like medieval stuff, you know. It was fantastic, and always remember, it was just amazing. We watched that film, and the lights at the McRoberts Centre, and the lights came up after the film, and I looked round, and there's all the great and the good in Scotland, and everybody's crying. Everyone was just in floods of tears. It was amazing. And then we went to this amazing after party. So it comes to about 2 o'clock in the morning. Now I've hired this plane to fly us back to London without the other company knowing. And comes to about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was a wee bit puzzled. Anyway, so I said to somebody, "Where's Mel? I've got to say goodbye to Mel." And they said, "Oh, he's up in that place." And so I went up there. Always remember, just a wee thing about Mel Gibson. He'd met my wife briefly once with my wee baby at that time. And I was pushing through the crowd. I said, "Mel, Mel." Yeah. And he came up and he gave me a hug. And he said, "What's your wife's name?" in my ear. And I said, "Annie." And he went, "Annie, how you doing?" And to this day, Annie thinks that he remembered her name. Anyway, we get into the car. They say, you got to go. I'm puzzled, right? Get into the car. It's like one of these big stretch things, you know. And we're shooting along the motorway. And in those days, it was like they didn't have mobile phones, you know. Like it was, you know, these brick phones, you know, the great big things that only you had in cars. And so it rings, and the driver's like, he's got the hat on and all that. He goes, "Yes." And he went, "Oh, it's for you." And I thought, "Oh, geez, what?" And he said, I said, "Hello?" And he said, "Yeah, it's Strathclyde Police here." I went, "Oh." You know, the guilty conscience. What have I done? And they said, "I believe you have a plane flying to London tonight." I said, "Yeah, we're just about half an hour away," or whatever it is, along the motorway. And they said, "Would you be willing to take a human heart down to London?" And I went, "What?" And yeah, whatever. And they went, "Right, just stay on the motorway." And that was it, they hung up. And then 2 minutes later, two motorcycle policemen went, "Oh," yeah, with the blue lights on. And an ambulance came in behind us. And we just went, they went like that. I always remember it, they went, and we just went, boom. It was terrific, you know. And we just went down. Because in those days, you know, they couldn't keep human hearts going for that long, you know. It was really important. And the time factor. And we shot onto Glasgow Airport, straight onto just where our plane, in the propellers were running. And it was a big yellow box that they gave us. And Annie and I, we got onto the plane, they put the yellow box between us, and we just took off like that, bang. And we were down to Farnborough. And as we got off the plane, there was an ambulance and motorcycle outriders, and they grabbed the box and took it away. It was gone. And I thought, for that moment of indulgence, for my indulgence, you know, like I wanted to go to that premiere, you know, like I wanted my wife to be happy. I wanted all that stuff. God had decided that somebody's life might be saved.
Listen, thank you so much. I'm going to get fined because we've gone way into overtime here. James will be signing copies of our bottles of the whiskey. Please come and speak to him, ask him questions. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, James.
Thank you.